Hi, I'm Diana Yoakley. I'm a peaceful parenting coach and mom of three, and I'm delighted to give you the latest science backed research on child development, parenting, and to support you in showing up as the parent that you want to be. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Delight in Parenting podcast. I'm Diana Yoakley, your host, and I'm here with Abigail Wald. I'm so excited to talk to Abigail today. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I love spending time with you. I love what you're doing. And thank you for sharing these messages with parents.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, most of all because I love hearing you talk because you have an amazing voice for radio. Really, it's so soothing. And for people in the audience that haven't heard about Abigail's work, I want to share a little bit about her work. So, Abigail is the mother of two teenage boys and the parenting mentor, thousands of families, including therapists, pediatricians, and even celebrities they turn to when they need real help making it through the day. Whether their kids are filled with too much vim and vigor or too much anxiety, Abigail knows how to meet families right where they are. Her popular podcasts have been downloaded over 1.5 million times. That's amazing. While she's brilliant at solving tough in the moment parenting challenges, her true gift lies in helping parents craft a meaningful story of family across the full 18-year arc of childhood. So much so that her clients often say they can't even remember how hard it was before they met her. And now you get to meet her too. I'm really excited to have you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And so, yeah, I would love for you to share a little bit more about, as we kind of talk about your background. What kind of brought you to do this work with parents um, and helping spread the message of more conscious, more regulated parenting, and of course, particularly also with neurodiverse families. But yeah, would you share a little bit about a little bit more about your
Sure.
background?
Yeah. So I work with all different kinds of families and but really um I would say that the parents that I work with the most are the parents who experience what I call the schism. And that's, I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But um, really, what we're going to talk about today is expectations, right? So, the schism that happens between the expectations that we hold and then the
Hmm.
reality that we experience.
Hmm.
And if you're a parent who struggles with that, that's what I want to talk about today.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about how expectations can complicate parenting a little bit. And there's a lot of obviously like parenting advice about setting limits and making sure kids, are you're raising like a respectful child or a child that um, you know, um steps up and takes responsibility for whatever like expectations performance. But yeah, we're gonna break this apart. We're gonna break it down into what's a healthy way around expectations and what are tricky areas to navigate this, because I know that when parents start thinking about like setting limits and coaching kids, it can get really tricky between like, well, if I can't punish or put consequences around this, what can I do to help them meet the expectation, right?
Yeah, and I think, even just hearing you talk about it, right? There's so many things that come up. So one is where are we getting these expectations from, right? Are they coming from our own past of like maybe there are things that we experienced in our childhood that actually were wonderful and we're like, I expect myself as a parent to be able to deliver that same experience for my child. Maybe there are
Mm,
things that we experienced that were horrible, and we're like, I have an expectation on myself to not pass that on, right? So
mhm,
sometimes our expectations are coming from the past. Sometimes they're coming from your best friend who also just had a kid, but her kid, she can like walk around in, the little like car, seat, and the kid sleeps all day and is great and whatever, and your kid is screaming their head off. So, sometimes those expectations are your best friend, your in-laws, your spouse, yourself, your own like confusion at why it looks different for you. Sometimes those expectations are coming from parenting books and all sorts of
yes.
expectations of, the Instagram version of how sweet it is to parent a child when we're full of connection and love, right? And so sometimes those expectations are like, why doesn't it look like what it's supposed to look like? And so I think the first thing we want to do when we're thinking about is expectations, and the first thing that sets us up for this cliff fall of the schism, the space in between expectations and our reality, is
Yeah.
like, where are these expectations coming from?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that kind of 30,000 foot view of where is it coming from? Because that is really important to note whether it's important for you to actually have this expectation, I would imagine.
Yeah, is this actually a value I hold? So some of those
Yeah, a family
expectations,
value.
right, some of those expectations will be values that I hold, right? Like, I don't want to scream at my child, and yet my reality is I'm screaming. Okay, so we have a schism. Well, that schism is going to make me feel bad about myself as a parent. And yet, in the moment that my child is spitting in my face, I don't have a better option. I don't know what that is. Okay. And so then that repeats, 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 repeats. And that starts forming the child's identity as a kid who can't control themselves and my identity as a parent who's off course. And so,
Mhm.
all of those things start creating shame and pain and, lots of other feelings, resentment, blame, grief, all sorts of feelings. And so really understanding if it's a family value. So when we take a look at where does this expectation come? So the next step is like, do I want to hold this expectation or not? So
Yeah, right.
maybe I can decide, you know what? I don't need my life to look like a magazine. That's not my life. Like I can actually enjoy my life, my people. The other thing you can do, and by the way, a little secret is you have the people you have. So you can never choose the magazine over your people. You always have to choose your people. And then if you don't like your people, then you can set about how can I fall in love with these people that I love? And that's a whole other very specific journey. But don't choose the magazine because that will never make you happy. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah. So now that I say I'm not going to choose the magazine, I'm going to choose my people. But I have this value that's not being met in my home.
Hmm.
Okay. About who I want to be or how my kids are. Maybe I have a value around grit, around stick-to-itiveness, but I've got a kid who
Hmm.
quits all the time. So now I'm like, this kid is coming up against my value, right? So now the next step is I have to say, is my expectation reasonable? So
Hmm.
maybe it's reasonable from a values perspective, but is it actually actionable and carry outable? So for instance, let's say I'm like, I have a value around travel. And so I'm gonna decide we need to take a giant family vacation for 6 weeks because I have a value around that, but I don't have the finances for that, or I don't have, the ability to pull my kids out for that amount of time or my work or whatever. Then I may have a value that's totally reasonable, but the actionability of it is not. Okay.
That reminds me of like a SMART goal, right? Like kids learn this in school, people learn this in their jobs sometimes. It's a leadership skill to know to set goals is important, I think. But you have to set SMART goals. You can't set a goal that you won't be able to succeed at because what's the point in that?
Exactly. Exactly. It winds up degrading our kids' self-esteem and our own,
Yeah.
right? And then
Hmm.
the more times we don't succeed, the more times we believe in our own failure.
Right. Because that is the experience of failure over and over. And really, self esteem is built on succeeding at those attempts. So it's okay if you fail like however many times, as long as you don't give up. But if you're coming close to giving up and you don't have the resources to succeed, you will stop at that failure. And that's going to be the conclusion of the story is that I'm just not good at this, that I suck at
Yeah,
this,
it
whatever.
right. And then these become these self-fulfilling prophecies where we're trying to protect ourselves instead of being curious and learning. And so, there's all sorts of other things that we won't go into
Yeah.
necessarily today, like growth mindset and lots of other things that affect all that. But at the end of the day, um, we have to make sure, as you said, that we're going after a SMART goal. Does it make sense? Is
Hmm.
it doable? Is it actionable? And then that can be based on many things. It could be based on my resources. Like, I want to spend all this time with my kids, but I don't have that much time. I've got 8 children
Yeah.
and I work, right? Or 3 kids and I work, whatever it is, right? Um, Sometimes it's, I want to be a super whatever regulated parent, but I'm actually a little hot and spicy. So, how am I going to become someone that I'm quote unquote not?
Mhm.
Maybe it's I want my kid to, love adventure, but I've got a kid who's filled with anxiety. So, sometimes it's I've got a kid who's neurodiverse. And so, I'm not understanding how their brain actually works. I've got a kid with ADHD and I'm telling them to do all of their schoolwork days in advance and do it in a measured way when that's not how an ADHD brain thinks and works. So the question is, am I fighting upstream? Because that is just not going to be just like the magazine. We want to say no to that one.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of like the front end of it, right? And then as I'm thinking about how it actually plays out, often if parents don't even realize this front end like process, they find themselves in the midst of like some situation, and it's like you're 12 years old, you should know better by
Right.
now.
Yeah.
Act your age, and the kid's like, huh? Like what? Like
Yeah.
they're not acting their age because clearly that's not in their capacity right now, right? Like
Right. I
that
was
is
just
very
going to say what
childish of
you're,
you. Like how are you acting
yeah.
so childish? Because I'm a child, right? Like, and that's
Yeah.
like mid-storm without even thinking about these in advance. But again, we can back into that and clarify how we end up there.
Yeah. I mean, children don't act their age, they act their abilities, right? So children act, and we all do, we act the level of skill that we have for that challenge. That's it.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
again, that's another area where there's a schism, where there's an expectation of a certain kind of action, but the skill level is too little. And so you see this a lot. And kids have their own schisms of, I want to be the best gymnast, and then I go there and somebody's better than me, so I'm just going to quit. Right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's a schism of an expectation and a reality. So for our children and for ourselves, learning to sew together these expectations and realities into actually a doable path that combines both our values and the current skills and the skills we actually want to build, that's how we get out of the forest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like a multifaceted approach. Um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think
and
for
kind of
me,
back
that's
to
the only thing that
mhm,
works because at the end of
yeah.
the day, if what I'm doing is I'm just, I call it behavior chasing, right? So let's
Hmm.
say I'm just dealing with a kid who, whatever, talks back. I'm dealing with a kid who refuses to do their homework. I'm behavior chasing. I've got a behavior that now I'm reacting to. That's the opposite
Hmm.
of leadership. And
Right.
when our kids' behavior is ruling our parenting, we're not leading them towards where they need to go. We're not soul shaping. We're not building their character. We are essentially in our own space at that time, almost like kids where we're going, well, that's not what I wanted. And, I get that. I've certainly felt that way many, many, many times. So, no shade, right? Like, I get it. It's a normal part of the process of parenting is to have our own temper tantrums of like, this isn't what it was supposed to look like. Like, for sure. I have spent many times feeling that way. I will even sometimes now my kids are, almost 17 and one is 18 and a half. There are mornings or nights or, sometimes a random day where I'll still find myself like, "Ugh, this isn't what I want this to look like." But then I have a
Yeah.
playbook of what to do about that and how to turn it around and get back into leadership. When we're
Hmm.
continually stuck in that cycle, that's when it gets really hard on us.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you're touching on this. This isn't what it's supposed to look like. The emotion under that, I would love to just kind of sit with this for a minute. And for parents that find themselves in this like phase right now, the emotion to me sounds like grief.
Yes.
Does that sound like grief to you? And then can we elaborate a little bit on like just sitting with it for a minute? Because when we push emotions away, we repress them and we move into problem solving too quickly. But like let's honor this grief and validate it for what it is, right? So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Oh, I love that you brought that up. Yeah, it is. It's grief. And
Hmm.
um, again, it's a funny thing because in the moment we feel so betrayed, really. We feel betrayed by our life, betrayed by these people that we're pouring all this attention and love into, betrayed by
Mhm.
our partner, by our circumstances, by the fact that, it could be anything, that your kid has a medical condition, or that, you're going through a
Mhm.
divorce, or, or just that your kid can't, whatever, build some skill you see other kids building, or you can't take a freaking nap, like whatever it is, okay?
Mhm.
We wind up, I think, often feeling betrayed because we're pouring so much love in, and then when it doesn't look the way we feel like we need it to look, there really can be feelings of grief, and not just grief, but actual trauma sometimes. Like, and
Mhm.
I also want to touch on this. So it brings up a couple different issues, and that's really where the rage comes from, right? So rage is really powerlessness. So rage is our very normal, healthy response in a way to a feeling of feeling incredibly powerless and
Mhm.
deeply vulnerable about that which we cannot control.
Mhm.
And
And
we
that's
can't,
why rage is one of those stages of grief and death. When somebody
yeah,
dies, you go through these stages. One of them is like anger. Sue the doctor. How
yeah,
dare they took my beloved one
yeah,
when they were hospitalized? It's somebody else's fault, somebody's fault, right?
exactly. Exactly. Because we need to rage to try to regain power in a situation that we feel so deeply powerless. And listen, we are so powerless in some ways in our parenting. And you have these people that enter your life, and I always say parenting's like an arranged marriage. You've heard me say that before, right? Where you wind up like with this person that you don't know, and you go, I'm going to pledge my whole life to you no matter what. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your medical, financial, emotional circumstances are, mental, I'm yours. We got it. Yours
Yeah.
forever. XO, mom, dad, right? Um,
Yeah.
and it's like, wow, wow, talk about an incredible depth of love and what that means. And talk about vulnerability and putting yourself on the line, Now, imagine you did that with a company. Imagine you said, "Hey, I'm going to finance this company no matter what. I don't even know who the CEO is. I don't even know what you sell. But you know what? You go into debt, I'll incur it. You need success, like I'll finance you.
Yeah.
Like I'm yours, whatever." Like nobody
Hmm.
would do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that with our family. We do that. That's what we do. That's the pact we make as a parent. And but we don't talk about that. And then it's like we're somehow blindsided that wait, what did I sign? What contract did I sign here?
This
And we,
isn't what I signed up for. This
yeah,
isn't what I didn't think it would be like this. This isn't what I
that's
thought it would
right.
be like.
That's right. I signed up for this, not that. And when we find ourselves in that position, that's where you're going to get that grief, that rage, those feelings of
Yeah.
betrayal. But there is a whole other way to do this that actually moves
Yeah.
you into empowerment and what I
Hmm.
think is the deep, real meaning of love. Like, it can become the most gorgeous journey. And so, I just want to say, I think that's why it's so important to talk about these schisms because they are the root of all of the pain, in my opinion.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because I think what you're alluding to is this whole mindfulness movement, right? And not resisting what is. When we
Yeah.
resist what is, like you said, love your people in your house and not the magazine spread. If you love the magazine spread more than the people in your home, you're resisting what is, and that
Yeah.
creates suffering. Like the two arrows thing. Like the first one
Yeah.
is like it's hard, maybe living with people in your house, but the second one is voluntary. It's if you are trying to change them constantly and molding them into something else, that creates another layer of suffering and it's unnecessary. So yes, it can be
Exactly.
really hard to live with some people and raise
Yeah.
like kids. At the same time, when we resist that, we're actually adding more unnecessary stress to the whole
Beautifully
entire
said.
thing.
Just beautifully said. Absolutely. And the thing is that at the end of the day, right, we have to be honest and say there's also a fit issue. And those of
Mm-hmm.
you with more than one kid know this, that some temperaments fit
Yeah.
somebody else more or less. So you might get
Yeah.
siblings who just, they're like bonded from day one and it's super easy and they just go around hugging each other and loving each other. And you've got other siblings who literally can't even be in the same room. And it's not always like often there are things we can do as a parent to encourage one
Yeah.
direction or another, for sure. There are things we can do. But like the main core vibe of that, you're not usually creating that. That's usually like a
Right.
temperamental, almost elemental issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like
Mm-hmm.
this
Yeah.
nature and that nature. Do you know? And
Yeah.
so, did you get fire and water? Did you get fire and earth? Did you get fire and air? Like, do these things work together? Do they put each other
Yeah.
out? Are they fighting constantly? That those are realities. And we have the same thing with our children with a parent, right? So sometimes one of your kids is like ease, another of your kids is growth, another of your kids is worry. Like you find you have very different themes with each child. That doesn't
Yes.
mean you love one child more than another, but one child could be easier for you. One child could, like go in harmony with your natural temperament, and another child might sort of the waves might go the opposite way. And how do you create a family where all of those are love and all of those are equal love, just different love? And how do
Mm-hmm.
you acknowledge the fact that, for some of us, we're going to be as uncomfortable to our kids as some of them may be to us. And that also in and of itself is grief and trauma and an opportunity to rise above all of that, to actually choose genuine capital L love, to choose
Yeah.
leadership, to choose rising above the
Mm-hmm.
circumstance, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. Yeah, like the fit concept and something to kind of, I guess, put parents' mind at ease. I've always thought like there's no favorites, but I read an interpreter like of a research study, and I don't know how many times it's been replicated, but the research study basically was saying that parents do have favorites, and the favorite tends to be the one that is the most easygoing and cooperative with the parent's temperament. Now, again, this isn't to make you feel guilty about it. Think about the flow of water. Water will flow wherever there's the least resistance. Any object in motion will go towards where there's least resistance. And so it's just like I guess it's just like a force, like a natural force. And we're the same way. Like if it feels hard, it's going to be harder. If it feels easier, it's going to be easier. So it's a natural tendency from a survival perspective to just gravitate towards something that's a little easier, right? Like that doesn't mean we give up on achieving certain things that feel more difficult, but I guess just to normalize, if you tend to think like, well, I have more than one child and one maybe the other siblings maybe think that that's my favorite. It's not my favorite, but that one just gives me the least problems. It makes sense why that might be perceived by the other siblings as she's the favorite, he's the favorite,
Well, and
because
I agree with you. And I think it's also really important that we do very clearly and very openly signal to our children, like, wow, this is a challenge. I'm excited. Thank you for bringing this challenge. I'm excited to
yes.
learn here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like there is a reality because when we're like, no, no, you're not more challenging, the child knows that you're
Yeah.
lying. Like they
Yes. Yeah.
know that. And
Yeah.
you know that you're lying. The real thing is what going back to what you said earlier, which is actually learning to accept that on some level, like in all of this, there's a lot of like Buddhism in here, but like the reality is like life is suffering. Okay. That's like a part of
Yeah.
life. And if you
Yeah.
think back about your own life, like, yes, the moments of ease, they're really great, but the moments that forged your character are often moments of great difficulty. And we're often
Yes.
most grateful for some of the biggest challenges in our life, as long as we overcome them, as long as we rise from them. So
Yes.
when you can turn this child that's the thorn in you into the sort of, the proverbial, instead of sand, it becomes a pearl, right? And like an oyster, when that child becomes the pearl, then you realize like, oh, thank you, thank you. And so that child begins to feel your genuine, true love. That
Mm-hmm.
like, thank you for not making it so easy. Thank you for being this grain
Yeah.
of sand. Thank you for the gift that you provide. I
Uh-huh.
love this. Right. And thank
Yeah.
for going with that, whatever. Like you can have different responses to your kids, but the reality is like, and that's why I always say, like, at the end of the day, it's love the one you're with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Love each person for their exact brain, their exact archetype, their exact neurotype, their exact temperament. Like,
Hmm.
love them not
Hmm.
despite that, love them for that.
Right. For that. Yeah. Yeah. I love this conversation. It reminds me of how that thorn is like in your side or whatever, or the more difficult relationships, they're calling us to stretch our hearts
Yeah.
if we are courageous enough to do the hard work. It's actually an opportunity, like you said.
Yeah.
And um and we touched a little bit on trauma earlier. Now, obviously, a difference between like a traumatic situation versus just a second. You can elaborate on that if you have thoughts about it.
No, it's okay. What were you going to say?
Okay, I was going to say, I was watching an interview with Dr. Christopher Willard, and he was saying how the more likely outcome of trauma is post-traumatic growth, not PTSD.
I love that.
Humans are built for resilience, and when we tackle difficult things, we're wired for resilience, actually. And so, when a child is being difficult, there's actually more opportunity to grow from that experience than the likelihood of just being stuck and staying traumatized, right? And sure, there might be a period of PTSD, a period of feeling like you're traumatized and you're suffering and you're helpless, but that's not the end of the story if you keep showing up. If you
Yeah.
stop there, then maybe, but generally humans are very um, survival oriented, and it's connection is part of our survival, like being
Yes,
connected to
I
people in our
love that.
homes. Yeah.
And this is the thing. This is why, we're talking about parenting today, but what we're really talking about is expectations and schism. Like, why aren't we just talking about, whatever, potty training or kids
Yeah.
who are talking back or, school homework? It's like those are all important too, right? And we do. We have answers for all of the practical stuff too, because this is like that. It's like, how do you find God? Well, you chop wood, you carry water, right? That because
Yeah.
the reality is like it is all in the practice. It's how you do the potty training, how you do the snack that they just throw on the floor, how you handle the moment they refuse to go to bed. Like, yes, it's very, very practical and it gets down to the very, very nitty gritty. So yes,
Mhm.
it's not all philosophy. Like today we're talking about this side of it, right? But a lot of how that philosophy gets, or all of how that philosophy gets carried out is in these nitty gritty tiny moments of like, you just hit your brother with a frying pan. Let's talk about it, right? So like all of those things have to get really very very specific, right? So
Mhm.
yes, we have to do that. But at the end of the day, if we don't change our own relationship to difficulty, our own
Uh-huh.
relationship to our own disappointment about what we thought it should look like, then we can't get our job done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why
Because
I
we're
say,
acting out these practical like instances out of our own values. Like we're acting them out unconsciously. So if
right,
what we bring in clarity to what our values are as a family and as a person, which then will give us clarity about expectations, that will then inform the practical behaviors that we implement in potty training and whatever rudeness with teenagers or whatever. But if we just jump straight in, we're kind of unconsciously trying to chase behavior, which is what you were saying. Like if we go start straight up with the behavior, we're kind of like blinded. It's just like a tunnel vision out of anxiety, trying to stop something and change and control it. But that's not
exactly.
actually going to be the best long-term solution for us because
It's
we're
just, it's
missing the
not the
foundation.
way, right? It's like, it's not the way to actually enter in from a place of strength and power so that you can
Mhm.
actually make a change, right? You want to
Right.
be in your best, most strong position so that you
Mhm.
actually can affect the outcome. And
Mhm.
if you're always running around, you're always behind and you're not focusing, right? So it starts with the mind of where to focus, and then it goes down to the nitty-gritty of when they say this, do that. When they do this, do that. But we have to
Mhm.
go upstream first.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to get clear on, yeah. So to kind of recap, you mentioned are these expectations coming from? And then which ones do I want to uphold based on my family values? And then how does my child, based on their temperament, personality, whatever, like genetics, and my other people in my family, what's everybody's capacity and skill set for this? And
Yes.
then what goals can we set based on our capacities and skill sets? And maybe it's different goals for different kids. Like one of my younger
Exactly.
kids has amazing executive function, but one of my older ones, maybe not as much. So I would have different expectations actually, because diversity, like whatever, like everybody's good at something and they're not as great as something else. Let's kind of like the links of the chain make the strength of it. So let's highlight
Yeah.
everybody's strengths and not make everybody equal. Everybody has to have the same executive function skills so that everybody's a great planner. Not necessarily. Somebody's a great innovator, but maybe that makes important planning. So
Yeah.
whoever's the great planner, come on, you do that part. It's a team approach, right? It's like a family system. We're
Yeah.
not supposed to do everything alone perfectly. That's why we need other
Right.
people.
Yes, absolutely. And also to remember that it takes so long for this brain to be built. We know they're not
Yeah.
going to have a fully functioning, fully built brain till 25, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, um, you can really start to see those leaps through the years. I mean, I've been through teenagerhood now,
Yeah.
completely for one of my kids and almost completely for the other one. And so, there are these definite stages of development, and you can literally see it. Like you can
Yes.
like it's
Yes.
like looking at one of those like naked watches where you see the gears. You can see like which
Yeah.
gears are working and not. Um,
Yeah.
but I think at the end of the day, really deeply understanding we're not all here for the same purpose. We're not all the same person. We don't all need to hit an A across the board on everything. It's like at the end of the day, who are you? How can I love you? How can I help you become your absolute best self? How can I
Hmm.
separate that from what I think you should be? And then how can
Yeah.
I deal with my grief at the fact that it all looks different? And how can I deal with my own personal inner resilience that I can handle what it does look like? And how can I then conversely, it's a weird thing. If I'm trying to make everything look exactly like what I think it should look like, I get further and further and further away from what that magazine picture is. When I
Hmm.
totally lose sight of the magazine and I just focus on my people and I love my people accurately and correctly and scaffold and build the skills and get down, look at the top level and then build just like a company. I'm not just going to like
Yeah.
start a company and be like, okay, start a marketing team, start creating a product. I don't know what it is, but let's just get busy. That doesn't work, right? I'm not going to just chase trends all around. I have to know what's
Yeah.
the skill set, what am I providing, and then build the infrastructure that gets that mission done. So the same thing in a family. If I come and I go, I'm going to love you all, I'm going to understand you all. I understand I'm the CEO. I'm going to organize us. I'm going to make sure that I'm helping each department be the best that it can be. Together, we're doing this mission, as you said, a family, a team. And we get there, then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're like, oh, this is even better than the magazine. But it's because you
Right.
focused on your people,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
The whole
Yeah.
time you're
Yeah.
trying to create the magazine, you get further and further and further away.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you were talking, I was thinking about how I think a lot of the I think a lot of the struggle with this for parents could be coming from a feeling of if it's hard to accept people in your home as they are, how do you feel about accepting yourself as you are?
Yeah.
Are you able to fully accept yourself just the way you are without trying to fix yourself into a perfect little controllable picture in a magazine or whatever, right? Like meeting how hard are you actually trying to meet expectations, and who gave you the message that your place on this planet is to make other people happy with you?
Yeah,
Right. So I
I
think it's much
absolutely
deeper
think,
work about
yeah,
ourselves. So it can be really revealing about,
yeah,
yeah, because we can only love other people as much as we love ourselves. Like the heart, like it's impossible to like have all this deep acceptance of somebody else but reject ourselves. If we're doing that, I think it's a false way of loving somebody, because that authenticity starts with us first. And if it wasn't modeled for us or given to us, of course it's hard. but
Yeah.
we have to
And
still
I
start
think at
there.
the end of the day, you're 100% right. Like there are many people for whom it's like, well, I've always been here for self-improvement and I'm always working on myself and I need to achieve these things and therefore you must need to achieve these things. And it's like, why are we all doing that? You know what I mean? Like, is that actually bringing you happiness? And 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 so yes, there's a subset of people for sure for whom that's true. And I also think there's a subset of people who you know, it's funny. It's like if you were painted blue and there wasn't a mirror, you're walking around, you don't see blue. You don't understand. But then
Yeah.
you'd look at your little blue children and be like, why are you blue? Because you
Yeah.
see them as blue. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
maybe because I'm blue too. Do you know what I mean? And we don't see ourselves sometimes until we see our kids. And then we go,
Yes.
oh my God. And so sometimes it's that too, where it's like we actually don't see ourselves. We're not looking at ourselves enough, but we're
Yes.
very sensitive to what's incoming. And so
Yes.
sometimes it's the opposite issue, right? So
Mm-hmm.
some people look at
Mm-hmm.
themselves too much. Some people don't look at themselves enough. And I think either way, it's a focus of like being able to see everybody, yourself included.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to this point about trying to work on ourselves and self-improvement, I think there's like two ways we could be approaching that. One would be because we're broken and we need to be fixed. But another way could be we're okay just the way we are. And at the same time, I would love to grow and learn more about this. So it depends on what your motivation is. So that's a good litmus test to check yourself if you're constantly, and sometimes I get stuck in this too. Like I have a ton of parenting books and I love summits and interviewing experts. And at one point, maybe it was because I was like, oh, I really like, right, like I need to like try to fix this is not okay. Like I need to fix myself. But at some point, it's like, I'm okay just the way I am now. I feel like I'm living within my values more often than not. So I don't feel as guilty about how I'm behaving more often than not, right? It's nothing's perfect. And so, but when I am picking up a parenting book, I'm like delighted to read about it, not because I need to fix myself, but because there's so much that I don't know yet and it's exciting. And so I guess checking our motivation.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really great.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, such a good topic. I mean, it's a great topic, and I know we only have maybe about what 5, 10 minutes or so as we wrap up, but I'd love to maybe touch a little bit on for parents that maybe are still using limits, consequences, punishment to help children live up to expectations. Um, and if we say you shouldn't really be using punishments, consequences, threats as a motivator or as a consequence to not living up to to the expectations you have, or even for yourself, like your own inner critic, the way you shame yourself. So if we're not supposed to be shaming ourselves and criticizing and judging ourselves when we aren't meeting our own expectations, when our kids are not meeting expectations. Can you kind of just practically give us like tips on what can we do if we're not supposed to do that? What should we do?
Yeah. So, I will also go so far as to say that I wouldn't say we should never do those things. So I'm just going to back
Okay.
up and
Yeah.
say for me, um, I believe that there are some children who do actually really need very close consequences. And especially our kids with ADHD, for example, that's a really good
Mm-hmm.
example. So it's not to say punishment. So I want to take a moment and say punishment is really different from a consequence. Um,
Uh-huh.
and by the way, a consequence doesn't have to be a natural consequence. So sometimes parents get a little confused. This is like a whole other conversation we can have
Yes.
another
Yes.
day,
Yeah.
because this is like a long, big topic.
Yeah.
Um, but to say the quickest and easiest way to just clarify this for now is a punishment is emanating from the parent's emotional distress. All right.
Mm-hmm.
A consequence is really what's going to help this child learn, not not with my anger or upset. It's not about my schism. It's about really what's beneficial truly for the child.
Yeah. To
Yeah.
support them.
Yes. So For instance, let's say you've got a kid who, always forgets to put their binder in their bag. Let's just say. And let's say they forget to put their binder in their bag one morning. You've told them 100 times. So well, you can enable them and put it in. You can nag them and keep telling them to put it in. You can, tell them, give them a punishment for not putting it in. Now,
Mm-hmm.
here's where the consequence comes in. Some kids really need a consequence. So every day you're putting that binder in, they're forgetting and there's zero consequence. They're never going to learn because there's not a
Mm-hmm.
cost. And our ADHD kids are particularly experiential. So
Mm-hmm.
ADHD kids often learn somatically, not so much top-down information. So
Mm.
they learn experientially and they learn like they don't learn not to go around the corner in the bike quickly because you tell them. They learn not to go around the corner in the bike on gravel quickly because they skin their knee. And these
Yeah.
children actually need to skin their knee because
Mm-hmm. To see the boundary, to see where the like limit is,
they actually
experience it.
need that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm gonna let me take an example for you. So, if I tell my child go slow, go slow, go slow, and I make them go slow around the corner, they go slow around the corner. They don't skin their knee, and the parent thinks, "See, you should listen to me. You didn't go fast around the corner. You didn't skin your knee. You should be grateful." The
Mm-hmm.
child thinks, especially a child, let's say with ADHD, who's very experiential. And again, some kids are going to be very experiential without being ADHD. Some kids are going to be ADHD without being as experiential, but most of the time those things do go together. And so let's say we've got this very experiential kid. What happens is they go around the corner slowly and they think, you're an idiot. You told me I have to go slowly because I'm going to skin my knee. Well, I didn't skin my knee and I could go faster. So they will keep thinking that. They don't think, thank you for protecting me. They think,
Mm-hmm.
you know nothing about me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and again,
Mm-hmm.
this is about being in their reality, not being in the schism of what you think they should think, but being in the reality of what their experience is going to tell them. And so
Yes.
if you let them go quickly, and then you berate them for going quickly and skinning their knee. Now they think, I'm never going to do anything in front of you, or, I'm going to have to hide it next time because they can't stop needing the experience. That's just not how that brain works. So
Mm-hmm.
there's other ways that that can go as well. They might not think I'm going to hide it. Like there are other pathways, but none of them are great. So really what we want to do is go, how fast do you think you can go? Why don't you test yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you find your
Mm-hmm.
edge? Let's find your limit. And then that
Mm-hmm.
child now doesn't have anyone controlling them. They have to control themselves. They have
Mm-hmm.
to figure out. And we actually want them to find the limit. And the only way they know the limit is by knowing what's over the limit.
Mm-hmm.
Parent is uncomfortable with what's over the limit. So the parent is trying to get them never to go over the limit. But the child can't know the limit until they go over the limit because that's how you define a limit.
Yes, yes. I love this because it reminds me also of teenagers, toddlers
Oh,
and
yeah, for
teenagers.
sure.
It's basically when the limbic part of the brain is like more in charge and the prefrontal cortex
Yeah,
isn't as in charge in development. And so
yeah,
teenagers are exactly what you described.
100%.
And toddlers also like, I do it myself and let me fall within reason. Obviously, like, I'm not going to hand
Yes.
you like a gun to play with so you can test the
Yeah,
limit. Like certain things you're just not going to have access to until you're
correct.
older, but within developmental and safety reasons, like a skin knee, fine, like it's not going
Actually,
to
like
kill
we
you.
want it. We actually want it. The
Yeah, we
skin
want
knee
it.
prevents some of the other things. And when we control too
Yes.
much, that's when we get teenagers who never
Rebelling.
learned internal boundaries and spent
Yeah.
years practicing flouting external boundaries, and then they don't have any internal boundaries, right?
Yeah, I
So,
love this.
yeah, there's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I want to get back to like specifically what you were asking me. What were you were asking me to give an example of
Yeah, of
in front of
like
them. Oh, so
basically, yeah.
so basically what I'm saying is there actually are times we actually want to front load consequences. So I would
Hmm.
argue that it's not a situation where we don't ever want consequences. Sometimes we do want a parent with consequences, depending on the child that we have, right? And it's
Right,
not
right.
always natural consequences like a skin knee. Sometimes we're actually going to bring a consequence, but I won't go into it because it's too long of a thing
Yeah,
to discuss.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, so that is a tool, but it has to be used for the benefit of that child in the way that's actually going to benefit that child, right?
Right. So it can be incorporated as a learning experience that down the road is actually going to support them.
Yes,
So, like, I'm not going to come and bring your lunch today because I did the last few times, but this time I'm
exactly.
not going to come and I'm sorry, but it sounds like you're going to be hungry for lunch. And
Yeah,
then they experience that hunger and they're like, oh, I don't want that to happen again. So you could
exactly.
have gone in and taken them their lunch, but at some point it's like, don't helicopter so much because that's a form of control too. And
Yes,
controlling is not good for anything, right? We want to coach our kids, not control them. And so it's like, yeah, that's what it feels like when you
yeah,
miss, when you constantly don't prioritize bringing your lunch. And so maybe now, because it's an experiential thing, you'll remember to do it. It's a very somatic experience when you're hungry.
exactly. That's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're
amazing.
often
Yeah.
trying to teach our kids from the outside in, but really people learn from the inside out.
Oh, that reminds me of like play-based schools, and the research on play-based schools is that it's so much more impactful and even development intelligence, but also social and creativity, all these benefits because children are experiential learners. I mean, we
That's
all
right.
are to a certain degree,
Yeah.
but feeding
Well, and the
memorization
more,
is
yeah,
less powerful than letting them explore from the inside
yeah,
and integrating it on a deeper level through
yes.
play, particularly with younger kids.
And the more strong-willed a child is, the more gifted a child is, the more
Mhm.
highly sensitive a child is, the truer that statement is.
Yes, yes. The autonomy is so much more important.
Yeah,
Yeah. And their identity and who I am. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, amazing. As we wrap up, would you share a little bit about where people can find out more about your amazing work? And thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can either go to abigailwald.com, ABIGAILWALD, or you can go to motherflippingawesome.com, and that's flipping with a G. So motherflippingawesome.com, and either one of those will take you to me. And there is a like a 8 or 9 minute video you can watch to learn more. And yeah, I love to support parents. So if this conversation speaks to you, then reach out.
Yeah, amazing. We'll have the links below as well. Thank you so much for taking the time. I always am delighted to speak with you. Always learn something new, and our conversations always go deep. So it's amazing. And then we come back and practical and make it actionable as well. So we'll catch up next time. And thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
having me. I so appreciate what you do. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you.